It is Thursday, September 2nd, 2021, and I am Philip Waters. Every once in a while, I do this at work that I do like a video to explain a security concept and have a colleague that I used to work with in risk management, essentially, that challenged me to put together some kind of content to help one of her clients about illustrating simply, security risk. And so I took on the challenge to put this together. Again, I do this a lot at work, but that I wanted to reflect that this is not for my employer, that these comments do not represent my employer. And this is me reaching out to help a colleague and to help the community in general about maybe conceptualizing risk. And this is just based upon my own experience. I'm not necessarily professionally trained in risk itself, but I do have a little bit of experience in trying to express security risk. And give a shout out to my colleague, Michelle, and we'll give her just a little bit of airtime here as we're going to share out her business here is the bossably.com. And Michelle, this is a video is to accept this challenge to like put together some content. So yesterday she had some colleague that was just looking to illustrate this simply. She knows that I had done this work in the past, so I went digging around and just to see if I could find, digging around on the internet, some other illustration that might reflect what I wanted to talk about. And then there's this. So this came from a blog that was Failfast, blogspot.com, and it talks about risk management, and it talks, the kind of the idea of fail fast, and tongue in cheek for me is like, and fail often, right? Because sometimes I feel like that, right? Is that let's talk about these things, let's get it in there fast, and then move on to the next thing. Like fail fast, move on, right? But this illustration I thought was really neat, that there's overlapping kinds of risks that come from different kinds of places, right? And it doesn't even express security risk here, but there's financial risk in security things, and there's product risk in security things, and there's process risk in security processes, and the organization and delivery. And I was like, okay, that's great. So then I'll iterate on that and try to explain my view of the world. And if anybody is looking at this like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, I'm going to say that like, none of us do, and all of us do, because everybody's looking at this from a different angle. And I think as security professionals, as risk professionals, it's upon us to communicate well our view of the world, right? And so here's my view of the world, or one view of the world. And I had to laugh at the challenge from Michelle just a little bit, because I was like, she said, well, get a really simple diagram. And I'm like, simple? Oh my gosh, I mean, if I'm doing my job well, I'm pedaling in simplicity. But if I'm like really in the zone, I'm pedaling, I'm like deep in complexity. And so I want to talk about security risk from my point of view, which is operating systems and networks. And then I just want to put this out there, that there is so many other things you can think about: a development pipeline, web application security, security breach insurance, those kinds of like there's all kinds of ways to look at this. My expertise is the technical sort of risk that comes from the different components and how that is all pieced together. So I used to work for a cloud provider, so I've seen it from that side. Now I work for a company that's a very avid cloud customer, right? So you can see it from that side. And then just understanding the different components about how all these pieces fit together it gives me my particular lens. So I'm gonna walk you through this diagram, which is just a bunch of like icons thrown on the page, right? But so we're thinking about actors, whether it be employees, whether it be ourselves, or an attacker, You think about where they're at a coffee shop, they're at home, they've got a laptop, a mobile device, whatever they have, they're going through a router, they connect to the internet, and on the other side of the internet is any kind of thing, right? They've got some VPN concentrator, some router that gives them access to their office where their development tools are. They're building artifacts of software, they're digging up knowledge, they have databases of information, customer information, those kinds of things. We've got the cloud out here, Azure and Office 365, all kinds of SaaS products, bare metal products. We've got compute products that we're building clouds on. And then, maybe if you're working from an office after, you've got all of these tools, you're also serving up in some physical data center, something you're serving up internet, you're serving up data storage, you're serving up web applications of whatever kind, right? Inside the data center, there's all kinds of risks. So there's the servers themselves that need to be patched of different varieties, Linux and Windows and databases and storage again. And then physical security, like it's outside of the office, it's over in some other country, some other state. And so are the lasers turned on? Is the door hanging open? Can I trust the guy that's sitting in the front door? Is the guy that's giving me my border routes? Does he understand security for, border routing, hijacking, those kinds of things, all kinds of security risk. And so to frame it simply, it's whatever you can express to be important at that given time period for that given condition. So a lot of times where I'm working in security, it's interrupt driven. So some security incidents happening, some some discovery that is our hot button for the day is interesting enough that we spend a week on it, or we have some security product we need to release, or we need to engage with the vendor for a particular set of time. We've got to get some request for proposal out. Very interrupt driven, and I'm easily distractible, right? And so it's difficult to strategically express security risk. And so my strategy when I was working with Michelle was just find one, write it up, send it on, move to the next one. Find one, write it up, send it on, move to the next one. And then over the course of time, I'm able to really kind of get a comprehension for which things are important. And so one is the knowing and the gathering and understanding, and then prioritizing those and communicating those with greater intensity. So as a penetration tester, one of the things that we do is we start with like discovery scans. So I'm going to be sitting in the data center or in the cloud, and I'm going to be hitting them with a scanner, whether it's a port scanner or whether it's some web application scanner, and I'm going to be looking for stuff that's interesting, right? And I'm going to triage those. I'm going to say, okay, this is important for compliance, this one's important to keep our keys safe, whatever it is. I have to make some assessment on it's some human assessment on which things are important, and that might mean putting together some objective mathematical criteria for me to measure it by, for some policy that I can measure against, some thou shalt language, or we would prefer to have things this way. So it's going to depend. Did a lot of rambling there. I maybe failed the goal to keep it short and to keep it simple, which again, I find comical. But for simplicity's sake, you out there somewhere, if you are dealing in risk, then there is something that is important, whether it's an asset, whether it's reputation, whether it's cost, and those are the lenses that you will base that on. What you base your assessments on. And so one of the things that we used while we were working together were artifacts from the risk management framework. It provides a pretty good calculus on how to measure a particular kind of risk. And so I was going to pull that up, but it looks like, oh yeah, hold on one second. So embarrassingly, I've now been schooled by a government organization who has more succinctly than I explained this, despite their large bureaucracy. They say, prepare, categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor. And so there's another way you can kind of look at what I just rambled and described. There are spreadsheets that you can use to calculate these. So just as a quick, hey, I went to Google and looked for stuff, and I can't really speak to these at this point, whether or not they're clean or reliable or useful or those kinds of things. But we did have our own spreadsheet that we use, but I'm running across these. So if you go to this GitHub, that's US NIST Gov, privacy engineering collaboration space, you've got these tools and risk assessment, and we've got the FAIR privacy and privacy risk assessment methodology, PRAM. This is for privacy risks, right? So somebody's looking at it through that lens. And then it just so happens that they have these worksheets of framing business objectives, assessing system design, supporting data map, prioritizing risk, selecting controls, right? So I uploaded one of them just to take, or so I, downloaded one of them, uploaded to my Google Drive to just take a look, right? So you can kind of go see, they just have it broken down into likelihood, impact, risk. There's all kinds of ways you can do this, and you can get really intense about how specific you get about it. The idea is like let's have some structure around how we measure these things, because there's going to be things coming at us every day, all day, right? And so the other thing is, this is very useful for, is when it comes time to, somebody's like, oh man, there's a problem here, oh man, there's a problem. It's like, okay, if you really think that that's true, then follow some structure, put it in the template, and it's one of those gates that says, I know that you say that it's important, but if you think it's really important, then you're going to do the work to make this happen. And just kind of as an aside, just as an example, so doing some construction on my house, I said to the electrician, hey, I would like some wiring in my house. And they said, hey, I don't have time to do this, but I know that you know how to do this part. All you got to do is drill holes in your wall from here all the way to the other side of your to your office, right? And I was like, you know what, knowing that I have to do it myself, suddenly I don't need it so bad. And so being a little bit tongue-in-cheek about this, but risk management frameworks give us gates and structure around trying to define risk in a way that we can communicate with one another and prioritize them. So just back to wrapping up my simple diagram on, there's lots of ways to look at risk, that there's lots of lenses to look at risk at, and that there are structures that you can use to try to define risk. Thanks for taking the time. I hope that this was valuable, and Michelle, keep being awesome. Thanks.